The silver on Theodora Shadowfang's wrists was polished bright enough to mirror the moon, and that was the cruelty of it. Not iron from a dungeon, not rope from a raid. Treaty silver, etched, ceremonial, clean. So every wolf on both sides of the border could pretend this was honor instead of sale. Her ankles were swollen from late pregnancy, each step sending a hot ache up her calves and into the hard, constant pressure in her lower back. By the time they reached the border stones, she was breathing through another contraction, jaw clenched so tightly her teeth rang. Snowmelt ran black between the stones, torches hissed in the damp wind. Blackwood warriors watched from the opposite ridge, expressionless. Darius Frostborn stood beside her in his regent cloak, sable collar lifted, his signet ring catching firelight. Her mother's brother, the wolf who had taught her to skin elk when she was 10, who had carried her on his shoulders after her first hunt. Now he held the chain attached to her shackles. "Lift your chin," he murmured without looking at her. "Do not embarrass your blood." "My blood?" Her voice came out hoarse. "You signed me away." "I saved this pack." His smile was thin and private. "War would have gutted us by winter. One womb is cheaper than 1,000 graves." Another contraction seized her, sharper this time. She bent forward, breath punching out. Darius's fingers dug into her upper arm, not to comfort, but to keep her upright for the witnesses. Across from them, a Blackwood emissary unrolled the treaty skin and read in a carrying voice. Theodora Shadowfang, sovereign daughter by maternal line, transferred to Blackwood custody as tribute bride and peace hostage until a treaty heir is confirmed. Transferred. Custody. Confirmed. Words that scrubbed a person into property. Darius took her thumb, pressed it hard onto an inkstone, then onto the skin where her name had already been written by another hand. She tried to yank back, but silver bit skin, and he leaned closer so only she could hear. "I have already filed Regency continuance," he said softly. "If you miscarry, if you die, if the child fails to thrive, Shadowfang remains under my hand. Sign, and at least your mother's old retainers keep their throats." Theodora stared at him, breath shaking, and saw no uncle there. Only calculation, polished as the shackles. "Monster," she whispered. He smiled for the crowd and kissed her temple like a blessing. "No, niece, survivor." They marched her over the line before midnight. Blackwood Keep rose from the mountain like a jawbone, dark stone and cedar beams, banners snapping against a storm sky. They did not take her to a bridal suite. They took her to a guarded birthing chamber in the lower royal wing, where the windows were narrow and the door had 2 locks. One inside, one out. Labor struck fully the next evening. Pain came as a tide and then as teeth. She sweated through wool blankets, clawed grooves into the bed frame, bit down on her own forearm to keep from screaming when no one answered her first 3 calls for water. Midwives in gray came and went with lowered eyes. One wore Shadowfang beads braided under her cap, and Theodora's hope flared, until she smelled frostborn pine tar on the woman's cuffs. Not home scent. Darius scent. "No," Theodora gasped as another wave hit. "You don't touch me. Send for the Blackwood healer. Send for the king's physician." "Breathe," the bead-wearing midwife said too calmly. "The child crowns. Save your strength." Hours blurred, thunder rolled, blood slicked her thighs. At last, with a tearing burn that made her vision white, her son slid into waiting hands. For one perfect heartbeat, she heard it. A cry. High, furious, alive. Milk crashed painfully into her breasts so fast she sobbed. "My baby. Give him." The midwife turned away. "Lungs full of fluid. We clear him first." "No." Theodora tried to rise, but 2 attendants pinned her shoulders. "Bring him here." A wet, choking sound came from behind a screen. Then silence. Not settling silence. Smothered silence. They brought her a bundle wrapped too tightly and laid it in her arms with ceremonial care. Cold. The pup's muzzle was wax pale, tongue blue, fur still damp, but wrong. Not the dark charcoal she had glimpsed in that single cry, but mottled brown. A crescent nick notched one ear, the kind servant den pups got when litters fought in cramped crates. Her son had been whole. Her son had cried. "This is not mine," she said, very quietly. The bead-wearing midwife didn't meet her eyes. Birth grief causes confusion. Theodora pushed the blanket back with shaking fingers, searching for the umbilical tie. The knot was linen, old and stiff with dried blood that wasn't hers. Her own blood still ran bright, copper-sweet down her legs. "This is not mine," she screamed. A guard at the door flinched. One attendant made the warding sign against madness. "Mercy, lady," said the midwife. "Better to hold him once than never." Theodora lunged, nails catching the woman's cheek. "Where is my son?" She got a slap for that, hard enough to crack her lip. "You are tribute," the attendant hissed in her ear. "Not Luna, not Queen. Do not make this uglier." They left the stillborn bundle against her chest and latched the outer lock. Through the long black hours before dawn, Theodora sat upright, bleeding, shivering, and smelled herself. Milk. Warm, insistent, alive, not the sour-sweet stillness of death. Alive. The breaking point came at gray light, when exhaustion had made every edge soft and then suddenly sharp again. A scullery girl entered with water and wouldn't meet her gaze. The girl's hands trembled so badly she sloshed half the basin onto the floor. "Please," Theodora said, voice raw. "Tell me where they took him." The girl swallowed. "I don't know, lady." Theodora leaned forward, ignoring the pull of torn muscle, and caught the girl's wrist. "You smell of wet wool and horse. You were in the lower yard before dawn. Tell me." Tears sprang into the girl's eyes. "I heard things?" "Say them." Before the girl could answer, voices passed in the corridor outside, the bead-wearing midwife and a male guard. "Ryder left before first bell," the guard muttered. "Good," said the midwife. "Regent Frostborn wanted confirmation before council wakes." Theodora went very still. The guard lowered his voice further, but wolf hearing made whispers useless. "What if the king asks to see the body?" "He won't. He rides the east line till noon." "And the live one?" "Across river by now." Footsteps receded. The room tilted. For a heartbeat she thought she would faint. Then a cold, lucid rage slid into place, cleaner than pain. If she stayed, they would drug her, call her hysterical, bury the body, and seal a death record before Raven Blackwood ever set foot in this wing. She would become the mad tribute who imagined cries in the dark. No. Theodora shoved the blankets aside. Blood ran down her inner thighs, sticky and warm. Her knees buckled when she stood, but she locked them and breathed until the black spots thinned. She wrapped the dead pup in a fresh linen and tied it to her chest with a sling. Evidence, shield, witness. At the washstand, she found a hairpin of bone and worked the inner cuff of her shackle against the hinge until skin split, and metal gave just enough for her hand to wrench free. The scullery girl stared, horrified. "You'll die in the halls." "Then I die moving," Theodora said. "Open the inner lock." "I can't." Theodora stepped close, letting the girl smell the milk on her skin, the blood, the shaking fury. "If you have ever had a mother, open it." The girl fumbled with the bolt. The corridor beyond was cold stone and cedar smoke. Theodora moved bent at the waist, one hand to the wall, following scent and instinct. Midwife herbs, horse sweat, damp wool, and beneath it all the faint trail that made her heart slam. Newborn musk, fleeting, already thinning. Left at the fork. Down servant stairs slick with ash. Through a laundry passage where steam stung her eyes. At the bottom landing, 2 guards rounded the corner. "There!" one barked. "Tribute woman, stop!" She ran, not fast, not graceful. A staggered, tearing lurch that sent fire through her pelvis and made each step a gamble. She barreled through the war kitchen, scattering apprentices. A pot of blood broth crashed, hot iron scent flooding the air. Cooks shouted. Someone grabbed for her sling and caught only linen. "By the moon, she's bleeding out! Get the captain!" The lower yard exploded with noise as she burst into dawn light. Frost silvered the flagstones. Sparring wolves froze mid-strike, heads snapping toward her. She heard horns at the outer gate. 1 long, 2 short. The signal for the king's return patrol. Good. Good. Her vision tunneled. She forced air into her lungs and pushed toward the gate arch as riders thundered in, cloaks dark with snow, wolves pacing alongside in half-shift. At their center rode a man on a black stallion, broad-shouldered, scar over one brow, eyes the color of glacier ice. Raven Blackwood. The Alpha King swung down before the horse fully stopped. Power rolled off him in a palpable wave, ozone before lightning. Warriors closed ranks around Theodora, unsure whether to seize or shield. The bead-wearing midwife appeared at the edge of the yard, breathless, blood scratch still on her cheek. "My king," she called, "forgive this disturbance. The tribute has suffered a loss and turned violent. She's delirious." "Liar!" Theodora tried to lunge for her, but pain folded her, and she would have hit stone if a hard hand hadn't caught her wrist. The instant Raven touched her, the world split. Heat slammed through her bones, wild and blinding. Her wolf, half mad with grief and blood loss, surged against her skin with a single impossible recognition that made her knees threaten to give. Him. Raven's breath hitched like he'd taken a blade between the ribs. His fingers tightened. Not hurting, anchoring. For a heartbeat, his stare locked on hers, glacial shock burning feral. Mine, something inside him snarled, ancient and absolute. Around them, the yard seemed to fall away. Then Raven inhaled. Once. Deep. His head snapped toward the bundle tied to her chest, then back to her throat, to the milk-wet stain spreading on her shift. His nostrils flared. His expression changed from stunned to murderous in less than a second. He released her wrist only to step in front of her, placing his body between Theodora and every other wolf in the yard. When he spoke, his voice was a growl that carried to the battlements. "Someone stole her pup from under my roof." The words hit the yard like a war horn. Silence followed. Stunned, brittle, dangerous. Then everyone moved at once. "Seal the gates," Raven snapped, not taking his eyes off Theodora. "No rider leaves Blackwood Stone. Not by road, not by tree line, not by river ford. Captain Ilyan, kennel every horse that ran before first bell and bring me tack cloths. Now." The captain struck fist to chest and ran. The bead-wearing midwife found her voice first. "My king, this female is unwell. She attacked healers. Raven turned his head toward her, slow as winter sliding off a roof. His irises flashed, blue blown through with molten gold. "You will address her by name," he said. "If you speak again before I ask, you will do it through broken teeth." The midwife went white. Theodora swayed where she stood, blood soaking the hem of her shift, milk cooling against her skin. Her body had reached that strange cliff edge past pain, where everything felt too bright, too loud. The clang of a dropped spear, the horse's steam, the thud of her own pulse. But beneath all of it was him, the scent of him. Cedar bark split by rain, cold wind over granite. Male wolf, dominant and lethal and, impossibly, threaded through her nerves like home she had never known. The pull of it made her stomach drop. Her wolf dragged up from grief haze, hackles high, then froze in startled recognition. Mate. No, no, not now, Not here, not with blood on her thighs and her son gone. She tried to take a step back. Her heel slipped on broth and frost. Raven caught her again, palm bracing her elbow this time, and lightning ripped through both of them so hard she made a broken sound in her throat. He did too. A sharp intake, almost a hiss, as if her skin burned him. His jaw flexed, muscle jumped in his cheek. For one raw heartbeat his control cracked, and she saw the wolf beneath the king. Feral, possessive, half-crazed by scent and certainty. Mine. Her knees buckled. He moved before she hit the stones, sweeping her up against his chest with an efficiency that felt less like gentleness and more like instinct too old to question. The stillborn bundle bound to her front pressed awkwardly between them. Raven inhaled once over the top of her head and went rigid. Theodora felt him parse it. Old blood, cold flesh, linen long dried. Then her. Fresh milk, torn body, live hormones screaming for a nursing pup. His fingers dug into her shoulder, not enough to hurt, enough to anchor himself from tearing the yard apart. "Look at me," he said. She did. The lock of eye contact hit like a second strike of lightning. Not lust, not exactly. Something deeper and more terrifying. A line thrown between two cliffs. A recognition that did not care about borders, treaties, or timing. She could see the moment he accepted it in the hard set of his mouth. "Theodora," he said, as if testing the weight of her name on his tongue. "Can you stand if I put you down?" he asked. No one asked tribute women anything. Her throat worked. "Yes." He lowered her carefully but kept one hand near her ribs in case she dropped. "Good." His voice cut across the yard. "Physician Mara. Here, bring postpartum linens, willow bark, and clotwort. No sedatives unless she requests." A gray-haired healer shoved through the crowd, eyes sharp. "She needs to be in a bed. She needs witnesses first." Raven pointed at the stillborn bundle. "Unwrap that body in front of me and the court scribe." The midwife blanched. "My king, surely that can wait?" Raven's growl rolled out low enough that nearby wolves lowered their heads without thinking. "Bring the scribe." While runners flew, Theodora fixed on breathing. In, out. "Keep standing. Don't fall before they hear you." Raven leaned closer, voice for her alone. "Did you hear your pup cry?" "Yes." The word cracked like bone. "Once. Then they turned away. I smelled horse in the hall before dawn. They said rider left. Said, live one across river by now." His pupils flared. "Who said it?" She flicked her gaze toward the bead-wearing midwife and the guard beside her. The guard had begun sweating through his gambeson. By the time the scribe arrived, Raven feather pen trembling over parchment, Raven had the entire lower yard ringed by armed sentries. He did not relinquish Theodora to anyone until he saw Mara's hands and herbs himself. Then, with visible effort, he stepped half a pace back. The body was unwrapped. Mara touched the tiny chest, the slack jaw, the umbilical tie. Her mouth hardened. "This pup was dead before this night," she said quietly. "Hours, perhaps a day. Dried blood in the cord. Different clotting pattern." Murmurs broke across the yard. The bead-wearing midwife tried to run. She made it 2 strides before Raven was on her. He moved so fast Theodora barely tracked it, cloak snapping, boots striking once, then his hand in the woman's braid, dragging her backward to her knees. Gold burned bright in his eyes now. "Chain her," he said. "Chain the guard. Chain every attendant who entered the birthing chamber." "My king, mercy," the woman whimpered. "You stole from a mother in labor." His voice was almost conversational, which made it worse. "Pray someone else in this yard has mercy. I do not." He turned back to Theodora, and the feral edge eased a fraction. "You are not delirious," he said. "You were wronged." The words landed inside her like a stake driven into shifting ground, painful, stabilizing. Mara reached for her arm. Lady, please, we must stop your bleeding. Theodora flinched automatically. Raven saw it. Ask her, he told Mara. The physician blinked, then nodded to Theodora. May I touch you? Theodora stared, disoriented by the simple courtesy. Yes. They moved her then, through a corridor suddenly lined with wolves who would not meet her eyes. Raven walked beside the stretcher but never touched her without warning, as if he could feel every spark the bond threw and was refusing to let it consume the moment. At her chamber door he halted, nostrils flaring at the old lock and the blood on the threshold. These locks come off, he said. My king, protocol, began a steward. Raven looked at him. Off! The steward croaked and started wrenching bolts loose with shaking hands. By the time Mayra finished stitching and binding, the chamber smelled of clean water, crushed herbs, and smoke from newly lit cedar at the hearth. The dead pup had been taken for formal verification under seal. The silver shackles lay on a table, cut through at the hinge. Theodora was drifting at the edge of sleep and adrenaline when the door opened again. She tensed, expecting attendance. Raven came in carrying a steaming cup himself. Not a servant trailing him. Not a taster. Him. He had shed his snow-wet cloak. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his forearms, exposing old bite scars and newer blade lines. A king who looked like he had been in his own kitchens. The cup smelled of iron-rich broth and marrow fat. She pushed up on her elbows, pain flaring. What is that? Blood broth. He set it down within reach, but did not press it into her hands yet. You lost too much. The war kitchen always has fresh stock. I made this one because I currently trust very few people in my keep. A hysterical laugh almost escaped her and died halfway. The Alpha King cooks? When required. He crouched so his eyes were level with hers instead of towering over the bed. May I help you sit? Again, with asking. As if she were something other than cargo. Suspicion clawed up anyway. Why? His gaze didn't flinch. Because you are injured. Because you need strength if you intend to hunt. Because the bond is clawing my ribs out and I would rather earn your trust than demand it. Honesty, blunt and unsparing. Theodora swallowed. Yes. Help me. He slid one arm behind her shoulders, careful of stitches, and lifted. Heat moved through her where his skin met hers, a low electric hum that made her breath catch. He felt it too. She saw his jaw tighten, but he set her against the pillows and withdrew before instinct could become presumption. Then he wrapped her fingers around the cup, his own hand hovering without covering hers, unless she leaned into it first. Small sips, he said. The broth was salty, metallic, alive with cloves and pepper. Warmth spread down her throat and into the hollow shaking spaces inside her. She hadn't realized how cold she was until then. Raven sat in the chair by the bed, not on the bed. Distance measured, deliberate. Outside, boots pounded in hallways, orders barked, doors slammed, chains rattled. Hunt preparations, interrogations. A kingdom moving because he said move. Inside, he kept his voice low. Tell me everything in order. Every face. Every scent. Every word you remember. She did. Halting at first, then faster as details sharpened. The pine tar on the cuff. The old cord tie. The guard's whisper. The mention of Darius. At her uncle's name, Raven's expression went still in that deadly way she now recognized. Frostborn Regent, he said. He crossed my border yesterday, smiling about peace. He sold me for it. He sold you for leverage, Raven corrected. Peace was decoration. When she faltered, shaking hard enough to slosh broth on the blanket, Raven rose and crossed to a chest near the hearth. He returned with a folded strip of dark cloth. My scent, he said. Cedar and rain. Keep this in your hand when panic spikes. Your wolf will use it as an anchor. She stared at the cloth. Why would you give me that? Because grounding matters more than pride. He set it on her palm and closed her fingers around it. Brief touch, no claim. And because if I cannot be beside you every moment, this is the next best thing. The fabric was warm from his pocket. She pressed it to her nose despite herself. The bond settled a fraction, less frantic. Raven moved back to the chair, leaned forward, forearms on knees. I will not mark you without consent. I will not present you as mate before you choose. I will not use this. He touched his chest once, where the bond thrummed, to silence your grief. Her eyes burned. She hated that they burned. Why? She whispered again, smaller this time. His answer came without drama. Because I do not need your submission, Theodora. I need your truth. Something in her armor cracked. Exhaustion took her in ragged dips, jerked her awake each time with phantom cries. Every start ended the same way. Her hand tightening on cedar cloth, her gaze snapping to the chair, finding him still there. Once, in the middle of a panic tremor, she woke to discover he had moved from the chair to kneel by the bed frame, one hand resting on the carved wood. Not touching her, just close enough that his scent reached her before fear did. Still here, he murmured. She slept again. When full dark settled, he was still in the room, eyes shadowed with fatigue, but alert as a drawn blade. No one had ever kept watch for her before. The moon court convened before midnight. Blackwood's great hall was all cedar pillars and stone arches, open at the roof center so moonlight poured down in a pale column over the throne dais. Elders ringed the floor in fur-lined cloaks, silver torque collars glinting at their throats. Scribes sat cross-legged with tablets ready. Guards lined the walls, claws half-bared. Theodora entered on her own feet, slower than pride wanted, faster than pain allowed. Raven walked half a step behind her left shoulder, close enough to catch her if she folded, far enough to keep his promise. The cedar cloth was hidden in her sleeve. She rubbed it with her thumb every few breaths. Whispers chased her up the center stones. Tribute female. Grief mad, they said. Claims live birth. Convenient, with Frostborn politics. On the dais, Elder Varkas of the Western Ridges raised his staff for silence. His muzzle had gone white with age, his voice had not softened. By treaty law, he said, the tribute mother's pup is recorded dead by attending healers. Disturbance in the lower yard has compromised order. Until death is formally confirmed and heir status resolved, the woman should be confined and examined for instability. The word woman was flung like refuse. Theodora opened her mouth. Varkas lifted one finger without looking at her. You will speak if called? Raven went very still beside her. Another counselor, lean-faced, amber-eyed, leaned forward with a sneer. She attacked pack staff and accused honored guests of child theft. Perhaps Shadowfang trains hysteria as diplomacy. A few elders chuckled. Theodora's vision narrowed. She smelled contempt. Old male dominance, political fear wrapped in righteousness. She had lived in rooms like this her whole life, where men decided which truths counted. She lifted her chin anyway. My son cried. A rustle of disapproval. Varkas struck his staff once. Silence in ranks. Tribute women do not interrupt counsel. The lean counselor stepped down from his place as if to physically steer her back. Come, girl. You will wait in seclusion while sane wolves deliberate. He reached for her arm. Raven moved between them so fast the counselor's hand hit Raven's chest instead. The hall erupted in snarls and scraping chairs. Do not touch her, Raven said softly. The counselor jerked his hand back as if burned. My king, she is unclaimed property under treaty. We are within our right to restrain. Raven turned, climbed 2 steps of his dais, then did something that sucked the air out of the room. He bared his throat to Theodora, not to the council, to her. Head tipped, pulse exposed. The oldest wolf gesture of trust and vulnerability any alpha could offer, especially in public, especially before elders eager for weakness. Gasps rippled through the chamber. One scribe dropped his stylus. Raven straightened and faced the court, voice carrying like iron striking iron. "You will correct your language. She is no one's property." His gaze swept them, daring challenge. "She is my fated mate." Shock detonated. Wolves were on their feet, shouting, "Impossible!" Border blood doesn't bind royal line. Unverified. Raven's snarl cut through all of it. Verified by my wolf, by her wolf, and by the moon over your heads. But hear me clearly. Even without bond, your law does not permit this filth. Varkas slammed his staff. Ancient treaty statutes grant council authority over tribute testimony in matters of succession. Then your memory is selective, Elder. Raven stepped down from the dais entirely, descending until he stood on the same floor stones as Theodora. Older moon law supersedes treaty custom. A mated Luna cannot be judged unheard. The words landed like stones dropped in deep water. Even the loudest dissent faltered. Varkas's lip curled. She is not Luna crowned. She is Luna recognized. Raven's claws slid free with an audible click. Test me on precedent, and I will recite bloodlines back to the first winter. The lean counselor, red-faced with humiliation, tried one last angle. And if grief has made her delusional? Raven didn't look at him. Then we prove it with scent and track, not politics. He raised his voice. I am ordering a scent tracking tribunal effective now. Every birthing attendant, guard, stable hand, and courier from last night will be lined and checked. Tack, blankets, river crossings, kennel drains, all of it. We track from the birthing chamber to wherever her son was taken. Murmurs turned sharp, alarmed. A tribunal this broad would expose more than one secret. Varkas tried to reassert control. That scale of inquiry requires council vote. Raven looked up at him, eyes gone fully gold. No, it requires a king with reason. I have both. He pointed to the guard captain at the wall. Post clause at every archive room, seal birth ledgers. Anyone removing records loses a hand. Then, to the room at large, each word distinct. Anyone who obstructs her testimony answers to my clause. Silence again, this time obedient. Raven turned slightly toward Theodora, not touching, waiting. It took her a second to understand what he was offering. The floor, not as spectacle, as right. Her pulse hammered. She felt dozens of stares like teeth on her skin. Her old training said bow, soften, survive. The cedar cloth pressed against her wrist said breathe. She stepped forward into moonlight. My name is Theodora Shadowfang, she said, voice rough but carrying. I birthed a live male pup in Blackwood Keep at storm midnight. He cried once. The body given to me was not mine. I name midwife Sarah, guard Holt, and any wolf carrying frostborn scent in my chamber as parties to theft. She paused, scanned the ring of elders, let them see she would not lower her eyes. If you call me mad, she said, do it after you smell my milk, and tell me what dead sons drink. No one answered. At the edge of her vision, she saw Raven's mouth shift, not quite a smile, something fiercer, proud and grim. For the first time since the border stones, Theodora felt her guard move. Not gone, not surrendered, but lowered enough to let one ally stand inside it. When she stepped back, Raven inclined his head to her in full view of the court, equal to equal, and she did not flinch from him. The hall had barely exhaled when a runner slammed through the west doors, panting, boots slick with mud and river reeds. He dropped to one knee so hard his teeth clicked. My king! Ford Patrol seized a courier at the lower crossing. Shadowfang Mount, Blackwood Pass token, false wax. He bit through his tongue before full questioning. Raven's head snapped toward Captain Ilian. Alive? Barely. Mara has him. Bring what he carried. The runner held out a leather satchel stained dark at one corner. The smell hit Theodora before the satchel opened. Pine tar. Frost smoke. Darius. Her stomach turned over. Raven took the satchel, weighed it once, then handed it to the nearest scribe without looking away from her. Read. The scribe broke the seal with shaking fingers. A thin wooden cylinder rolled into his palm, capped in silver etched with frostborn runes. The murmurs around the court changed pitch. Recognition, fear, greed. Regency dispatch, the scribe whispered. Read it aloud, Raven said. The parchment crackled in the moonlit hush. To acting contacts in Blackwood Birthing Wing, the scribe began, voice wavering. Confirmation required before second bell. Treaty female delivered live mail issue. Remove issue at first cry. Exchange with prepared body from servant den lot C. Ensure mother is restrained and recorded unstable if resistance persists. A wave of snarls rose, then cut off when Raven lifted one hand. The scribe swallowed and kept reading. Courier route river south to Pine Glass Hold. Child to be wet nursed under ash name until called. Death record to be filed in duplicate in Blackwood and Shadowfang archives. Payment schedule attached by clawprint. Paper shook in his grasp now. Contingency. If tribute contests loss, regent to present self as sole surviving Shadowfang heir under emergency stability charter. Optional future reveal of living child as puppet claimant to force border compliance. The words, optional future reveal of living child, seemed to echo off the cedar beams. Theodora did not feel her nails cut her palms until warm blood slicked her fingers. Varkas stared at Raven, face gone gray under fur. This could be forged. Raven tilted his head. Could be. He held out his hand for the parchment, scanned it, then turned it so moonlight struck the bottom edge. Frostborn private cipher in the margin, 3-dot break before every R, a habit from his tutor's script. He looked to the scribes. Verify. 3 scribes surged forward at once. The lean counselor who had called her hysterical spoke too quickly. Even if true, this only proves Shadowfang treachery. We must not let sentiment drag Blackwood into their succession rot. Theodora laughed once, sharp and humorless. Sentiment? She stepped into the center ring again before pain could slow her. He didn't steal only my son. He stole your treaty heir, your leverage, your peace, and your right to call yourselves secure. Her eyes cut to every elder in turn. If Darius controls a hidden heir from my body, he can pull both packs by the throat for years. Raven watched her as if seeing steel forged in real time. Ilian returned with another strip of parchment and a bundle of tags from the seized satchel. Payments, my king. Midwives, gate clerk, 2 stable lads, 1 archive hand, and a mark for Moon Court ear. The hall erupted. Name it. Traitor in council, lies! Raven's voice cracked over them like thunder. Enough. Silence slammed down. He handed the payment list to Theodora first. Not symbolic. Strategic. Her eyes skimmed down names she knew and names she didn't. Then stopped halfway. Breath-catching. Holt, Sarah. Archive clerk Denvin. Stable boy Kez. She looked up. Fury gone cold. And Marrowkeeper Tovin. A hiss moved through the elders. Tovin was one of Varkas's own ledger men. Varkas closed his eyes briefly, old shoulders bowing. Bring him in chains. Raven nodded once. All named parties detained at Moonrise Standing. He turned to the assembled court. Now you know the shape of the threat. Regent Darius Frostborn means to seat himself over Shadowfang and steer Blackwood by stolen blood. He bribed my house, forged my records, and trafficked an infant under treaty protection. His gaze went lethal. He has declared himself my enemy. For the first time, no one argued. The court fractured into action. Raven's orders shot out in hard, precise lines. Track teams to river routes, sent circles through every stable. Interrogators rotated to prevent coerced confessions. Archive seals triple-marked. Wolves ran. Bells rang. Somewhere in the keep, a horn called lockdown. Theodora should have collapsed. Instead, adrenaline held her upright like wire. She stood over the long map table in the adjacent war chamber, one hand braced on carved mountains, while captains placed markers at crossings and relay points. Each marker smelled of oil and brass. Each represented time her son had been out of her arms. "Pine glass hold," she said, tapping a narrow valley south of the ford. Too obvious for long-term hiding. He'd use it as pass-through. Raven, across from her, nodded. Agreed. Darius prefers layered retreat paths. If pressured, he'll move uphill to old shrine roads. Few patrols. Ancestral claim cover. Ilian frowned. "You know his movement patterns that well?" Raven's mouth thinned. "I've fought him twice by proxy and negotiated with him once. He smiles when he lies, and drinks from the wrong hand to make you watch the ring he once noticed." Theodora met his eyes across the map. Yes, that. The look held a beat too long. Attraction had become a physical problem by then, an undercurrent in every shared breath. When he leaned close to pin a route marker, heat rolled off him, and her wolf pressed forward, wanting. Wanting in the middle of blood, betrayal, and milkache. She hated it. She needed it. She couldn't separate either from the bond thrumming between them. A sharp cramp seized low in her belly. She gripped the table edge until it passed. Raven saw the movement instantly. "Sit," he said. "No." "Theodora." I said no. She straightened with effort. "If I lie down right now, men decide my child's route without me." His nostrils flared, catching pain, sweat, and stubbornness. "Then at least eat." She almost snapped at him, then saw he wasn't commanding as king. He was fighting panic as mate, and translating it into logistics. "Fine," she said tightly. He signaled without turning. A tray appeared within seconds. Meat strips, broth, black bread. She took 2 bites because he was watching, and because she needed to keep standing. Pressure mounted from every angle. Courtiers sent messages questioning the bond's timing. Shadowfang envoys demanded access to their sovereign daughter. Blackwood traditionalists muttered about foreign blood in royal line. Every corridor carried rumor, and beneath politics, Darius moved. A scout returned near dawn with frost on his lashes and failure in his posture. "We found the first relay hut, fire still warm, 3 adult scents, 1 wet nurse, 1 newborn, all gone less than an hour before we reached it." Theodora's knees nearly gave. Raven's hand closed around her forearm before anyone else saw. "Direction?" he asked the scout. "Split trail at Scree Ridge. Deliberate confusion. Goat blood scattered to foul scent." Raven's lip curled. He planned for trackers. The scout hesitated. There was a carving on the doorbeam. Frostborn spiral crossed by a cradle line. A calling card. Theodora closed her eyes briefly, seeing Darius's smile at the border stone. Survivor. No, predator. When she opened them, Raven was still holding her arm. Neither acknowledged the contact, but neither broke it until she steadied. By the time second bell tolled, 3 detained conspirators had changed their stories twice. One had tried to chew through his own wrist, and Tovin the ledger keeper was found hanged in his cell with no ligature marks, and both feet touching ground. "Not suicide," Mara said flatly over the body, neck crushed from behind. Darius was cleaning his trail. The keep felt suddenly porous, full of hidden knives. Near midday, Raven dismissed the last captain from the map chamber and shut the door himself. The latch clicked. At last, no boots, no scribes, no elders pretending concern. Only them. Theodora stood at the window slit, shoulders rigid, staring at the snow-bright ridge where riders kept vanishing and reappearing like dark stitches. "I should have seen him sooner," she said without turning. "Darius. The way he pressed the treaty. The way he made everything sound inevitable. You were in labor. I was raised by him." Her voice cracked, then sharpened. "I called him uncle." Raven stayed where he was, giving her space. Predators feed best where trust already lives. She laughed once under her breath. That almost sounds like comfort. It's strategy. A pause. And truth. She braced both hands on stone when another milk letdown hit. Painful, empty, useless without her son. Her breath hitched before she could hide it. Raven's head lifted. "What is it?" "Nothing." He waited. She shut her eyes, humiliation hot on her face. "My body keeps preparing to feed him. Every few hours. It hurts." She swallowed hard. "I hate that I'm angry at my own skin." Raven crossed the room slowly, stopping an arm's length away. "May I come closer?" The question undid her more than sympathy would have. "Yes," she whispered. He stepped in until his scent wrapped around her, cedar and storm, a shelter she had not agreed to need. Carefully, he took the strip of cloth from her sleeve, rewarmed it between his palms, and gave it back. "Breathe with me," he said. She did. 4 counts in, 4 out, until the cramping eased and the shaking in her hands softened. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted, voice small with exhausted honesty. "Be a mother with no child in my arms. Be a mate to the king of the pack that caged me. Trust when trust got me sold." Raven's expression went bare for a moment, stripped of crown and command. "I don't know how to do this either," he said. "I know battlefields. I know judgment. I know how to kill threats before they bloom." His mouth twisted. "I do not know how to watch you hurt and not tear stone apart." Her gaze dropped to his throat, to the pulse there she'd seen him expose in court. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "Bare your throat to me in front of them." "Because they needed to understand you are beyond their leash." He held her eyes. "And because my wolf would rather die than let them call you property again." Something inside her gave way quietly, like ice thinning at spring edge. She lifted her hand, slow enough for refusal. "May I?" He nodded. Her fingers touched the scar over his brow first, then the line of his jaw. Heat surged through the bond, not the wild strike from first contact, but a deep current pulling both of them closer. Raven leaned into her touch with a reverence that made her throat ache. "I'm afraid," she said. "So am I," he answered. They stood like that, foreheads almost touching, sharing breath but not a kiss, until a pounding at the door shattered the moment. Raven's head snapped up, wolf flashing gold behind his eyes. "Enter." Ilian burst in without waiting, chest heaving. "My king, interrogation chamber 3. Sarah demanded to speak only to Lady Theodora. Said she has proof of where the child is. Then she collapsed. Poison under her molar." Theodora moved before he finished. They found Sarah on the stone floor, wrists chained to a ring bolt, froth pink at her lips. Mara knelt beside her with herbs and curse words, trying to force antidote down a throat already closing. Sarah's eyes rolled, found Theodora, and fixed with frantic clarity. She clawed at her own chest, then at the satchel beside her. Theodora dropped to her knees despite the protest in her stitches. "Open it," she ordered. Ilian cut the strap. Inside lay 3 items: a frostborn signet pressed into wax, a wet nurse token carved with an ash tree, and a folded letter sealed in blood. Not wax. Blood. The room went colder. "Don't touch bare-handed," Raven said sharply. He stripped off a glove, wrapped it around Theodora's fingers, and passed her the letter. Sarah made a choking sound, desperate. Read. Alone." Blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. He said, "Only her." Theodora broke the seal. Darius's script slanted across the page, elegant and meticulous as ever. Niece, your son lives. Be grateful I preserve what your weakness would have squandered. You will come to terms if you want him breathing. At the next moonrise, deliver a signed renunciation declaring 1. The child born in Blackwood was stillborn. 2. No true mate bond exists between you and Raven Blackwood. 3. All Shadowfang succession rights pass permanently to my regency. You will arrive at the old treaty shrine with no escort and no royal insignia. If you comply, you will hear your son cry and may hold him under supervision. If you do not comply, I release sworn testimony that Blackwood staged your theft to claim Shadowfang by breeding and force. Border war will follow. In war, infants disappear. Choose as your mother should have chosen, stability over sentiment. Regent Darius Frostborn. There was a postscript, added in a harder stroke. Tell your new king that if he tracks the milk scent trail, he tracks it to a cradle over a ravine. Theodora finished reading and felt something settle in her spine. Terror, yes, but braided with a lethal calm. Raven held out his hand. She gave him the letter. As his eyes moved down the page, the air in the chamber thickened with barely contained violence. Ilian cursed softly. It's a trap. Of course it is, Raven said. Sarah convulsed once. Mara pressed fingers to her throat, then looked up and shook her head. Dead. Their best live witness. Silenced in front of them. As guards moved to secure the body, a second horn blared from the outer wall. 3 rising notes, the signal for hostile message at the gate. Another runner appeared in the corridor, face ashen. King Raven, Shadowfang delegation just arrived under White Branch. They carry Regent decree accusing Blackwood of abducting treaty tribute and falsifying a royal birth. They demand immediate surrender of Lady Theodora to Shadowfang custody, pending neutral inquiry. The room seemed to tilt. Darius had struck both throats at once, her child and her legitimacy, Raven's crown and his treaty. Raven looked at Theodora, letter clenched in his fist, gold burning bright in his eyes. If they take you, he said, voice like a blade drawn slow, you disappear behind Frostborn walls, and this war starts before dawn. Theodora rose, blood roaring in her ears, milk aching, grief blazing. Critical was no longer coming. It was here. Raven looked at Theodora, letter clenched in his fist, gold burning bright in his eyes. If they take you, he said, voice like a blade drawn slow, you disappear behind Frostborn walls, and this war starts before dawn. Theodora rose, blood roaring in her ears, milk aching, grief blazing. Critical was no longer coming. It was here. Then we don't let him choose the field, she said. Ilian blinked. Lady, she cut him off, already turning to the map table wheeled into the interrogation corridor. Darius wants 3 things at once. Me isolated, Raven discredited, and my son movable. If we barricade and refuse, he screams abduction and sends Shadowfang to our gates. If we surrender me, he wins. Raven's jaw flexed. I will not bait you. You won't. She met his stare, steady despite the pain sawing through her hips. I will. The corridor went still. Raven took 1 step closer. Explain. She tapped the letter. He demanded the old treaty shrine at Moonrise. He wrote that because he trusts the place. Ancestral protections, old oaths, no standing patrol. He assumes I'll come desperate and alone. Her mouth hardened. So I come desperate and apparently alone. Ilian let out a low curse. Too dangerous. Yes, Theodora said. And necessary. Raven's wolf pressed hard against the bond, protective fury hot enough to make her skin prickle. He threatened a cradle over a ravine. If he senses ambush, he could kill the child before we breach. Which is why I go first. Her voice dropped, rough with certainty. I can scent him before any of you can. Milk scent is still active. He can mask roads with goat blood and resin, but he cannot erase what my body knows. Raven stared at her for a long beat, war with instinct plain on his face. You're still healing. I know exactly what is torn. She lifted her chin. I also know my son is alive because my enemy said so when he thought it would break me. I will not sit behind your guard while men debate risk percentages. From the corner, Mara said quietly, she's right about scent. Postpartum mothers can track what trained wolves miss for a narrow window. Ilian scrubbed a hand over his mouth. Even if we do this, we need eyes in the shrine. The catacombs, Theodora said instantly. Old treaty records mention a burial undercroft with vent grates into the oath chamber. Darius used to boast he'd memorized all sacred roots. If he knows them, we use them. Raven turned to Ilian. Send stone rights and 2 historians. Quietly. I want ingress points within the hour. Ilian struck fist to chest and ran. Raven looked back to her. You said, apparently alone. She nodded. I'll send him what he asked for. A signed renunciation. Her lip curled. Forgery in his own style. Enough to make him bring the child as proof so he can watch me break. And when he does? Witnesses in the chamber. Not just your warriors. Elders, scribes, and at least one Shadowfang delegate who can't be called your puppet. He dies in open sight, or he survives to lie again. The door at corridor end banged open as 2 Blackwood guards escorted 3 Shadowfang envoys under White Branch. Their spokesman, gaunt and formal, unrolled a decree with shaking hands. By authority of Regent Darius Frostborn, we demand surrender of Lady Theodora Shadowfang to neutral custody. Denied, Raven said. The envoy bristled. Refusal constitutes admission. Theodora stepped forward before Raven could answer, blood-stained shift hidden now beneath a borrowed cloak, but her scent still sharp with motherhood and battle. Messenger, she said, you will carry my words to Darius exactly. The envoy hesitated, eyes flicking to Raven. Raven said nothing. Theodora held the envoy's gaze until he swallowed and nodded. She dictated, each word clear. I accept the terms. I renounce claim at moonrise in the old shrine. I come unescorted, bearing signed declaration. I require one thing only. I hear my son cry before I sign anything further. The envoy stiffened. You would submit. Theodora's smile showed teeth. I would make peace with my uncle. Raven's eyes cut to hers. He caught the lie scent and did not expose it. Go, she told the envoy. Run fast. He dislikes being kept waiting. When they were gone, Raven caught her wrist, gentle, grounding, but fierce under the surface. If this turns, I break cover. If this turns, she said, you trust me for 10 heartbeats first. He looked like he wanted to argue, to lock her in the highest tower and burn roads to ash. Instead, he inhaled, long and shaking, and nodded once. 10, he said. She squeezed his hand back. Good. By moonrise, the old treaty shrine crouched in the pines like a broken tooth. Its stone roof had collapsed on one side generations ago. Moonlight poured through the gap and silvered the central oath stone, a waist-high slab carved with both pack sigils worn smooth by centuries of palms and blood. Beneath it, unseen from above, catacombs webbed the hill, low tunnels smelling of dust, old bones, damp moss, and waiting wolves. Theodora came up the shrine path alone, cloak-hooded, silver treaty blade strapped at her thigh, forged renunciation folded in her sleeve. Every step tugged at healing flesh. She ignored it. Around her, the woods were too quiet. She paused at the shrine threshold and let her senses open. Cold granite, tallow smoke, old iron, male sweat hidden behind frankincense. And there, faint, then piercing, newborn musk threaded with milk-starved hunger. Her son, alive, close. Her knees almost buckled with relief, so violent it hurt. "Darius," she called into the chamber. A figure stepped from behind the oath stone, sable cloak immaculate, frostborn signet flashing. He looked unchanged from the border crossing, elegant, controlled, smiling with only his mouth. "Niece," he said warmly, "you look thin." Theodora stood very still. "Show me my son." "Business first." "Cry first," she snapped. That was my term. For one instant irritation cracked his mask, then he lifted 2 fingers. From the shrine's side apse, a hooded wet nurse emerged holding a bundled infant. The baby squirmed, face red, and let out a furious, outraged cry that slammed into Theodora's chest like a spear. Milk flooded so hard she hissed. "Alive." Darius watched her reaction with clinical interest, as if noting leverage points on a map. Satisfied? Bring him closer. After signatures, he gestured. Another accomplice came forward, a midwife Theodora recognized from the birthing room, younger than Sarah, ash-brown braid, hands shaking around a satchel. Theodora smelled fear and old blood and the unmistakable tang of frostborn tar on the leather. Darius extended a parchment. "Read your statement aloud." Theodora took it, eyes skimming the lies she had expected. Stillbirth, no bond, regency absolute. She looked up. "And if I refuse?" He smiled wider. "Then Blackwood burns with Shadowfang. You become the female who killed 2 packs for pride." From below, through stone vents, she felt more than heard the faint scrape of Raven's people shifting in the catacombs, ready but holding. 10 heartbeats. She counted. 1. Darius smug and certain. 2. Baby crying harder. 3. Midwife clutching satchel. 4. Wet nurse glancing toward side door. 5. Pain knifing through Theodora's abdomen. 6. Rage steadying. 7. Raven, a pulse of storm through the bond, waiting. 8. The moon sliding fully into the roof gap. 9. Witness moment. 10. She tore the renunciation straight down the middle. The rip sounded like a shot. Darius's smile vanished. "What did you do?" Theodora dropped the pieces at his boots. "I chose truth." He snarled. "Seize her." The wet nurse stumbled back with the child. The midwife darted for the side door. Theodora moved first, faster than pain, faster than thought, shifting mid-stride. Bone snapped, skin split, wolf surged out in a storm of black fur and silver eyes. Agony lanced her healing body, but momentum carried her into the midwife, slamming the woman against the oath stone. The satchel burst open. Frostborn signet, payment tokens, and duplicate death ledgers spilled across sacred carvings under full moon. From the floor, grates, and collapsed wall, Raven's war council erupted upward with snarls and steel. Elian and 2 guards took the wet nurse cleanly, catching the infant before she hit stone. Elders Varkas and 3 Mooncourt scribes emerged behind them, faces ashen but witnessing. Darius spun toward a rear passage, but Theodora, still in wolf form, launched and hit him at the knees. He crashed hard, cursing, clawing for her throat. She ripped his forearm to the bone before he could reach for a hidden blade. He screamed, "Witnesses!" Raven roared to the chamber as he strode in, eyes molten gold. "All of you, witness!" Theodora shifted back, half falling, blood slick on her mouth and thighs, and ripped her silver treaty blade from its sheath. Darius tried to rise. She drove the blade through his shoulder and into the oath stone with both hands. Steel punched stone with a ringing crack. Darius howled, pinned upright against the ancestral slab like an offering. Raven reached him a second later, one hand clamping Darius's throat, holding him there without mercy. The baby screamed again. Theodora turned toward that sound instinctively, and Ilian placed the bundle into her arms. Weight, warmth, breath. Her son rooted blindly against her chest, frantic. She sobbed once, raw and shocked, then tucked him tight under her cloak. Across the chamber, the surviving midwife, Ashbraid, pinned by guards, started shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Raven didn't look away from Darius. Name. Lilina, she whispered. Lena, Raven said, deadly calm. Speak truth before this moon and this court, or he dies silent and you follow. Lena broke. He paid us. Regent Frostborn paid Sarah and me. Said the tribute female wouldn't survive labor anyway, said we were preserving order. The stillborn was from Servant Denlot C, already dead. We swapped the pups at first cry. Holt took the live one to River Relay. Tovin altered the ledgers. I swear it. By blood. By bone. By moon. Moonlight brightened over her skin, scent shifting as oath truth locked in. The scribes wrote furiously. Theodora, swaying with exhaustion and fury, handed her son to Maera and stepped to Darius. Blood ran down his arm, dripping from the pinned wound onto ancient carvings. He bared bloody teeth at her. You were always a bargaining chip, niece. First your womb, then your grief. She slapped him hard enough to snap his head sideways. Read the names, Raven said to her softly, still holding Darius in place. She took the payment list from Ilian and read each name aloud into the shrine air. Holt, Sarah, Denvin, Kez, Tovin, Lena, and the council ears still under seal, pending arrest. Each one echoed under stone, witnessed by elders, scribes, and Shadowfang envoy, now dragged in from the outer path by Blackwood scouts. When she finished, Darius spat blood at her feet. You doom your pack for a bastard. Theodora leaned close enough that he had to meet her eyes. No, she said. I saved it from one. She stepped back. Raven's voice dropped to a growl only barely human. Judgment under moon law, child theft, oath corruption, treaty sabotage, murder of witnesses, and treason across pack borders. Darius jerked once against the blade, desperate, feral. You kill me, and Shadowfang fractures. Varkas spoke from the witness ring, old voice iron. Shadowfang already fractured under your hand. Sentence stands. Raven looked once to Theodora. She nodded. Raven shifted halfway, claws lengthening, and drove them through Darius Frostborn's chest in one brutal, final strike. Bone cracked. Heart stopped. The body sagged against the oath stone, then went still. The shrine held silence for one stunned breath, then another. Theodora took her son back from Mara and pressed her nose to his damp hair, inhaling him like prayer and proof. Mine, she whispered into his skin, trembling. Behind her, Raven's breath shuddered as the bond flared hot and fierce. Yours, he answered. Cedar smoke curled through the birthing chamber in slow blue ribbons. They had scrubbed the floor, burned the old linens, stripped the locks from the door. Fresh blankets warmed the bed. Moonlight from the slit window lay across the cradle where their son finally slept, belly full, fist tucked under his chin. The keep had gone quiet in the way battlefields go quiet after victory and grief, both. Raven stood by the hearth in a clean shirt dark at the collar, hair still damp from washing Darius's blood away. Theodora sat on the edge of the bed, loose robe open at the shoulder for nursing, skin marked with bruises, stitches, and survival. Between them hung the pulse of the unfinished bond, strong, undeniable, waiting. Raven crossed the room and stopped just beyond touching distance. The tribunal is done, he said. Lena confessed under moon truth. The Shadowfang envoy witnessed sentence and signed the record. Your son is recognized publicly by both courts. Theodora nodded, eyes on the cradle. And the accusation at the gate? Collapsed. A faint, grim smile touched his mouth. Hard to claim we abducted you when you nailed the regent to an oath stone in front of 50 witnesses. A breath of almost laughter escaped her, then faded. Her fingers worried the robe tie. Raven. He waited. I don't want this to be another thing done to me. She looked up, steady and vulnerable all at once. Not the bond. Not tonight. His expression softened into something reverent. Then hear me clearly. He knelt in front of her, so they were eye level. I want to mark you. I want every wolf alive to scent me on you and know you are protected, cherished, and never for sale. But I will not bite unless you say yes. Heat rolled through her at the words, equal parts hunger and fear. She touched the mating gland at the junction of neck and shoulder, where pulse fluttered fast. If I say yes, what will it feel like? Like pain first, he said honestly. Sharp. Then the bond floods around it. Heat, relief, recognition. You can stop me at any point before blood is drawn. His voice roughened. And you mark me back. Equal. Or we do nothing. Equal. Her wolf pressed forward, not in panic this time, but intent. Mate, home. Choose. Theodora nodded once. Yes. Raven exhaled like he'd been holding breath for hours. Say it. For me. Yes, Raven. Mark me. He rose, then paused again. May I touch you? Yes. He eased her robe from one shoulder, baring skin to cool air. His fingertips traced the line of her neck, feather-light, giving her time to flinch if she needed. She didn't. Gooseflesh rose where he touched. Look at me, he murmured. She did. He shifted halfway, the change rippling over him, eyes going molten gold, canines lengthening into white lethal points, voice dropping into a rumbling register that vibrated through her bones. Not monstrous, magnificent, controlled power bent toward care. He bent his head, inhaled at her gland, and she felt his shudder at her scent. Milk, blood, wolf, woman, his mate. Mine, he whispered against her skin, asking and claiming in the same breath. Yours, she whispered back. His fangs grazed first, just enough edge to make her gasp. Then he bit. Pain flared bright and clean, a white line of fire through her neck into her spine. She gripped his shoulders, nails digging. For half a heartbeat, it was almost too much. Then the bond detonated fully. Heat flooded from the bite through every nerve, molten and ecstatic, washing pain into something deeper and sweeter. She felt him inside her mind, not as intrusion, but as presence. Storm over mountain, iron vow, fierce tenderness edged with teeth. His pulse hammered against her chest, her own answered. Their wolves collided and twined. He held the bite exactly as long as needed for bond blood, then released and licked the mark once, soothing. The skin blazed like a brand. Theodora was shaking, breath broken, eyes wet with shock at the intensity. Raven rested his forehead to hers. Still with me? Yes, she panted, almost laughing at herself. Moon, yes. He cupped her face. Your turn, mate. Need and resolve surged together. Theodora pushed him back onto his knees and tugged his collar open. He bared his throat without hesitation, scars and pulse and complete trust laid in her hands. She traced his mating gland with her thumb. Ready? Always. She shifted just enough for her own fangs to drop, smaller than his, no less sharp, and bit down hard, deliberate, claiming. He groaned low, whole body tensing under her hands. She felt the puncture, the give of skin, the rush of his blood scent, cedar and lightning and male wolf. Power surged back through the bond in a second wave, stronger than the first because it was returned. Not possession, reciprocity. Mine, she said into his throat. His hands clamped at her waist, reverent and wrecked. Yours. She released, breathless. Their marks pulsed hot in tandem, then settled into a deep, steady thrum under skin and soul. The room seemed different afterward, colors sharper, silence fuller. Their son's tiny breaths from the cradle threaded through both of them like a shared heartbeat. The frantic edge that had haunted the bond since the yard was gone. In its place, certainty. Raven gathered her into his arms carefully, mindful of every bruise. She went without resistance, folding against him, forehead to his collarbone. "Mate," he whispered into her hair. She smiled, exhausted and fierce. "Mate." He kissed the new mark on her neck, then drew back enough to meet her eyes. "No one will ever take what is yours again." Theodora slid her hand up to cup his jaw, thumb brushing the mark she'd left. "Then stand with me, not over me." His answering nod was immediate, always beside. Their son stirred in the cradle, made a small, indignant noise. They both turned at once, then laughed softly, the same surprised sound. Raven stood and offered her his hand. She took it. Together they went to their child. Dawn painted the great hall gold instead of silver. Word had spread faster than any herald. Darius dead by moon judgment, the stolen heir restored. Proof witnessed by both packs. The chamber filled with Blackwood wolves in war cloaks and Shadowfang wolves in mourning gray, each side bristling out of habit, then stilling as Theodora entered carrying her son. Raven walked beside her, not ahead. At the center, Elder Varkas stood with staff lowered, age heavy in his shoulders but voice clear. "We are here to swear new law over old failure." Scribes unfurled fresh treaty skins. Mara stood near them in healer white, flanked by two neutral matrons from a river pack, chosen overnight by both councils. Ilian held the witness blade. The scullery girl who had opened Theodora's lock waited at the back wall, eyes huge. When Theodora saw her, she beckoned her forward into the witness ring. Varkas read first clause. "No sovereign daughter, son, or common wolf shall be sold, transferred, or bound as tribute spouse or hostage under pact treaty. Violators forfeit title and face moon trial." He looked up. "Do both crowns assent?" Raven answered. "Blackwood assents." Theodora, voice steady, answered. "Shadowfang assents." Second clause. "All birthing chambers in border territories shall be overseen by a neutral healer triad, with dual ledgers sealed in open scent and protected from regent alteration." Mara stepped forward. "I accept charge as first high matron under this law." Third clause. "Succession claims involving newborn issue require maternal testimony heard in full before council confinement or ruling." A murmur of approval moved through the younger wolves. A few elders looked sour and signed anyway. Then Varkas lifted the final torque collar. Silver chased with black cedar and Shadowfang obsidian, forged before sunrise by both smithies. "By acclamation of Moon Court and witnessed blood right," he said. "Theodora Shadowfang Blackwood is recognized High Luna of Blackwood and sovereign daughter of Shadowfang, seat holder of the United Border Council." Raven took the torque from Varkas but did not place it immediately. He looked to Theodora. "May I?" he asked, audible to the entire hall. 100 wolves watched. Theodora smiled without lowering her gaze. "Yes." He set the collar at her throat with careful hands. The mating mark glowed briefly beneath it, then faded warm. She, in turn, took the king's mantle clasp from Ilian and pinned it back onto Raven's shoulder, a quiet, public symmetry. Some wolves blinked at that. Others thumped fists to chests. The Shadowfang envoy who had carried Darius's decree stepped forward, knelt, and touched 2 fingers to the floor in formal submission. "High Luna," he said hoarsely, "Shadowfang requests your counsel until a lawful heir moot is held." Theodora shifted her son higher on her hip. "You'll have it," she said. "No more regencies without oversight. No more daughters traded for signatures." From the side, the lean counselor who had called her hysterical approached with visible reluctance, wrists already bound in black cord. Ilian announced, "Counselor Bren is charged as Moon Court ear from Frostborn payments. Pending sentence." Bren spat at the floor. "You're handing law to a female's grief?" Theodora met his sneer with calm. "No, I'm handing it back to truth." Raven didn't even look at Bren as guards hauled him away. When formalities ended, Wolves surged forward, not chaotic, but human in their hunger for new footing. Some knelt. Some offered oaths. Some simply stared at the child and wept quietly for what nearly vanished. The scullery girl hovered at the edge until Theodora caught her sleeve. Name? Pella, my lady. Pella, Theodora said, loud enough for nearby ears. You opened a locked door when it mattered. Will you serve in the new birthing ward under Matron Mara? Pella's mouth fell open. Yes. Yes. Hi, Luna. Mara nodded approval. Report to me, afternoon bell. Later, in the high courtyard, snowmelt dripping from cedar eaves, Raven and Theodora stood with their son between them, wrapped in black and gray. Beyond the walls, patrol banners of both packs snapped in the same wind for the first time in generations. Raven brushed a knuckle over the baby's cheek. What do we call him before councils drown him in titles? Theodora leaned into his side, Mark warm at her neck. Ashen, she said, for what burned and what grows after. Raven smiled, fierce and soft all at once. Ashen Shadowfang Blackwood, he murmured to the child. You are wanted. The baby yawned, unimpressed with history, and gripped one of Raven's fingers. Theodora laughed, full and unbroken this time. Raven looked at her, then bent to kiss her temple just above the mark she gave him and the one he gave her. 2 claims, 1 vow. No mother's truth would be buried here again. And under cedar, moon, and the clean bite of mountain air, their future began with all 3 heartbeats in the same rhythm.